God Family Country, welcome back. We've been following the Republican National Convention over the couple of days, been watching a couple of cool clips, and Thursday night's lineup was amazing. There was a lot of great people that I've seen before. I got to see an interesting perspective from Trump's granddaughter, and we got to hear from, I believe, one of Trump's sons. And a lot of other people. I don't want to discredit or discount them because tonight we're talking about Thursday night. I tuned in for a lot of it, and I can say that it was great. It was a great show. It looked like everybody there was having a great time. I didn't think that something like this could be this fun. I wanted to give you guys a couple of key moments. Weren't the most important moments, but just moments that I could remember off the top of my head while putting this together and getting it out to you before tomorrow, Friday. We're going to go ahead and start with Tucker. We're going to go ahead and show you some clips from tonight and react to them. All right.
American citizen, Tucker Carlson.
So fun! Thank you! Oh, this is wild. Thank you. I've been good to see you. Thank you. I feel like I know about half the people in the room. This is wild. What are you doing? Justin Wells. Thank you, guys. Okay. Can I just say, Peter Navarro is back. Welcome to Peter Navarro. Suffering the fate that has happened to so many who are friends with Donald Trump. Thank you for having me. I have been to many conventions. I have never been to a more fun convention or a convention with better vibes.
Yeah, true. And I know we're just getting into it, but good vibes for the most part. There was like a weird prayer earlier in the week, but other than that, good vibes.
They literally let Navarro out of prison. First of all, thank you. This feels a lot different from what I thought it was going to feel like. I can't hear you, but I know it's something good. So I watched the video of...
You know, one thing I do like about Tucker is, you know, he's definitely sure who he is, and I like that confidence, but also at the same time has a sense of humility to him.
What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania about 50 times. I think I was one of about 8 billion people around the world who watched it. And the more I watched it, the more it struck me that everything was different after that moment. Everything. And this convention is different. The nation is different. The world is different. Donald Trump is different. When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, I thought at that moment, that was a transformation. This was no longer a man. Well, I think it was divine intervention. But the effect...
Divine intervention. A lot of people are calling it divine intervention, and rightfully so. If you look at some of the pictures online of when Donald Trump turned his head, one before it was going to go and hit the ear, but when he was like this, let me see here. He was like this, it was going to hit him, and then it hit his ear right when he turned. You can call it luck, and that's fine. There's a lot of things that fell apart for him to get that lucky. So I'm going to call it divine intervention as well. When he did raise his fist, you could feel they used a good term, the defiance of evil and the patriotism and the heart of what it is to be an American, because he had given more than most do. His life was almost taken from him. And in the past, other presidents, they did not fare as well, unfortunately.
That it had on Donald Trump, he was no longer just a political party's nominee or a former president or a future president. This was the leader of a nation. And I think there's a difference. I've spent most of my life in Washington, where the president is at the top of the pyramid. Everyone wants to be the president. But if you think about it, the presidency comes with great power, obviously. But if you think about it, that is a title that is bestowed by a process of some sort that can be subverted. And in the end, it does not confer by itself, as no title does, legitimacy. Just because you call yourself the president doesn't mean that much inherently. I can call my dog the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. It doesn't mean she is. It's true. And you hate to say it, but it is also true, as a fact, that you could take, a mannequin, a dead person, and make him president.
Yeah. Weekend at Bernie's meme coming in. Everybody knows that's the Biden meme that's rolling around. So he's taking some punches. Absolutely he is.
You could. I'm just saying theoretically possible.
Yeah.
With enough.
I like his comedy. That's my type of comedy. It's one of my many shades of comedy. Definitely funny.
Cheating, that could happen. But being a leader is very different. It's not a title. It's organic. You can't name someone a leader. A leader is the bravest man. That's who the leader is. That is true in all human organizations. This is a law of nature. And in that moment,
the bravest man is a leader. Very true. And to be brave there's a lot of different, that doesn't always mean being the most violent. That doesn't always mean being the most outspoken. That doesn't, I'm not saying, obviously a leader is spoken to a point where everybody else wants to hear what they have to say. And obviously a leader knows a thing or two about fighting. But a leader, it is a role that many want, but few obtain. And many are called, but few are.
Moment, Donald Trump, months before the presidential election, became the leader of this nation. That was the most obvious to me. And I have to say, I think it changed him. He reached out to Trump within hours of it that night. And what he said to me that night, having just been shot in the face, he said not a single word about himself. He said only how amazed he was and how proud he was of the crowd, which didn't run. And I thought two things. The first thing I thought was, well, of course they didn't run. His courage gave them heart. A leader's courage gives courage to his people. And the second thing I thought was, this is the selfish guy I've been hearing about for 9 years? Really? Not a word about himself? About his people, period.
Interesting. That is how the media paints Trump. They paint him as very selfish, self-absorbed. Trump's not here to be your friend. He's not trying to make you like him. He's very determined on he's already self-determined, meaning who he is. He doesn't have to decide on the fly based on who he's dealing with. And you saw that even in the assassination attempt, when he raised his fist and he was fight. Classic Trump. Nobody would have thought that was out of the ordinary for Trump, or a new thing for Trump. Trump was Trump, true and true. Now, has this experience changed him? Absolutely. It's changed him. It's changed the country. It's changed his loved ones' lives. Just listening to his granddaughter, wondering if her grandpa's okay. Well, people are online saying, I can't believe they missed. And some of these people are people who come and visit our country. They're from major universities. They have passports coming to America, which I'm hoping changes, especially if you're a visitor here. You don't get to just kind of say, whatever you want to say, and then come here. But let's move on.
And the second thing I noticed, which I don't think anyone has remarked upon in public, but I'm just going to since I don't have a script, like why not, is that he turned down the most obvious opportunity in politics to inflame the nation after being shot. To inflame the nation, which is an opportunity that almost every other politician I've ever met, and certainly his opponents, would have taken instantly. And they would have said, well, what is this? How did he get shot? Like, how did this happen? And those are real questions that we have to get to the bottom of.
Real questions. You're right. Because everybody else is asking them, and Trump could very much so be on a war rampage, scorching earth, looking for answers. And those answers will come, and we will get answers. His eyes is on the prize. He's counting his blessings. And in due time, when he feels that he wants to deal with something that's happened to him, absolutely. We can't do anything more to the assassin. He's dead. And he's gone.
But in the moments, the days, the week after the shooting, he did not say that. He did his best to bring the country together. And I thought, this is the divisive figure? This is the irresponsible person? No. This is the most responsible, unifying behavior of a leader I think I've ever seen. So the question is, where is he leading us? And I could go on for hours, but let me just sum it up. I do think the entire point from the famous escalator ride 9 years ago until today of Donald Trump's public life has been to remind us of one fact, which is a leader's duty is to his people, to his country, and to no other. That's the point. That's the only point. And another word for this is democracy. Democracy, in case you're a little sick of being beaten in the face with democracy on television, actual democracy is the proposition that the citizens of a country own that country. They're not renters, they're not serfs, they're not slaves, they are the owners.
America 101, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, regardless of how you feel, that is our ultimate goal. That is our ultimate liberties. And we need to make sure that we don't give up those liberties as a collective owner in America. If people would start taking ownership in America, stewardship, feeling like they're a part of America, and that was what really one of the reasons that made me start this channel, because I didn't always feel like I was an owner of America. I felt like I was abandoned, like so many people do. And a lot of times it has to do with just ideologies that are being fed to us, ideas that are being fed to us. And we kind of miss the point that no, this is our country. This is everybody's country. And we need to come together to be able to do more, because we can always do more together. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? So that is what America is. It's teamwork making the dream work. We're coming together. We share these liberties. We live our lives, and we try to leave the place better than when we arrived for the next generation. And hopefully those before us left it better as well. Now we can get into arguments about that, but pretty much the principle of being free in America and keeping it free.
And for that to be true, their leaders have to represent them, which is another way of saying they have to do what the people want them to do.
Imagine
or
that.
Or a close approximation thereof. But if they completely
That's interesting.
Ignore what people want, not just 1 year, but generationally, say for 50 years, then it may be, I don't know what, it's not a democracy. And so I think the entire Trump project, paradoxically, is attacked as an enemy of democracy, is to return democracy to the United States. Hey, let's pay attention to what people actually want. And the lack of interest in that question in Washington is something that ultimately drove me out of the city after 35 years. Lawmakers stepping over the prostrate bodies of their fellow citizens ODing on drugs to go cast votes to send money to some foreign country.
Yeah, I saw that in a lot of the budgets. I think one of the COVID bills, they were sending money for gender studies. And I was like, what? What gender study? Why do you need to send 13 million or whatever it was for gender studies? And if you think that I'm misinformed, go ahead and look up all the bills that they were trying to approve during COVID and when they were arguing, and they wanted money for gender studies. And maybe that's packaged and a broad term so they could do more with it, but maybe it's not. And if it's not, then just say it's not and call it what it is. But packaging something up and approving gender studies, I don't really think that we need gender studies in 2024.
Yeah, actually, we've lost more Americans from drugs in the past 4 years than we lost in World War II.
Okay, so let's look at drug overdoses for... Let's look at drug overdoses real quick and see. How many deaths since World War II? 400,000. So we got 400,000 deaths in World War II. Excuse me, not since World War II, but 400,000 deaths. Right? And then these guys weren't helping me out. Drug overdoses, top 100,000 in 2022. So... deaths per 100,000 standard population. You can see it's just skyrocketed here. And why is it skyrocketed? Well, you got the open border, you got people bringing the fentanyl in, and you got nobody treating the fentanyl peddlers like terrorists that they are. But that will soon change with this regime coming in, with this with Trump coming in. He's already made some really great ideas. He's put some ideas on the table that are going to be really great, and I'm not going to go over them now here, but it would involve eliminating some of these key players that are eliminating our citizens unprejudicedly, color, creed, race, age, child, adult, senior citizen, taking them all out.
Yeah, our bloodiest war, more than we lost in World War II.
You guys saw, I just checked it. You know, I saw the fact checkers at the end of this talk about a lot, but they sure didn't talk about that, did they? They didn't talk about if that was possibly aggravated, the increase in overdoses, if that was tied to looser borders. And when they do talk about this border bipartisan deal, know that they were out to lunch for 3 years. And they came up when it was election time and was like, we're going to get this in order. And I don't know if everything was there that needed to be there. So the Republican side was like, we're not really filling this bill. And so they just said, well, Trump doesn't want to do our bill. We're trying to do the border. You guys were trying to do the border because Texas was stepping up and putting barbed wire there, which you cut. But now you're doing the border. So it's like when I hear people talk and they're in the news, it just sounds silly. I'd be embarrassed to try to keep up the facade that they try to keep up constantly.
Does anybody care? It is pathetic. It is pathetic. And do you hear a single word from Washington about doing anything about it? We know where the drugs are coming from. We know the supply routes. The U.S. military spent billions bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You don't see our commander-in-chief suggesting that we use our military to protect our country or the lives of its citizens. No.
Imagine that. Imagine protecting the lives of our citizens for the country. Imagine if the president was saying, enough's enough. I'm not going to lose another citizen to fentanyl. And I'm coming down hard. I'm going to find out who's supplying it, which countries are bringing it in. I'm going to charge those countries tariffs. I'm going to penalize those countries, and everybody's going to feel the pain. Not, oh, well, he's dead. Oh, rest in peace. Oh, well, we have a drug intervention problem. Oh, let's open up another rehab. No, real consequences.
That's for Ukraine. And it's too much, actually. It's too insulting. It's too insulting. It's a middle finger in the face of every American. It's a very clear statement, which is unmistakable. And that is, we don't care about you. And Donald Trump, whatever you say about him, and I think he's a wonderful person. I know him well. By the way, the funniest person I've ever met in my life, actually. You can't be funny without perspective or without empathy, which is true. But everything else about Trump aside, he actually cares because he's interested in the people who live here because that's his job. A father's job, his duty is to his family. An officer's duty is to his men. A president's duty is to his citizens. And he seems to be the only one who thinks that. And in his choice for vice president, J.D. Vance, he's made that really clear. J.D. Vance, I'll say this about him, is a thoroughly decent man, and I'll just admit it, a friend of mine, one of the very few politicians in Washington who actually is very close to his own wife, which is wonderful to see. And she's wonderful, actually. But J.D. Vance has views that are closer to Trump's voters than anyone else in Washington in office. Therefore, he's the vice president. That's called democracy. So I will stop on just one point, and that is what's happened over the past month since the debate.
Yeah.
And particularly on Saturday in Butler, I think a lot of people are wondering, what is this? This doesn't look like politics. Something bigger is going on here. I think even people who don't believe in God are beginning to think, well, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah. Everything goes wrong. Secret Service doesn't get the message from the local police department. Not sure, but the communication that the guy was climbing on the roof to when he took the shots. I mean, go look at the timeline. We don't have time to go through the timeline here, but it was gross negligence. And Trump made it, and he lived. Unfortunately, we lost Corey, and 2 other people were injured. Corey is the retired, I believe he's a retired firefighter.
Actually. And I'm starting to think it's going to be okay, actually. I do think that. In the day after the midterm elections in 2018, Antifa came to my house. The Democratic Party's militia, okay? I was at work. It was obvious when I was at work because it was public. My wife was home alone. They tried to come in through the front door. They terrorized her. She hid in our pantry. It was on television. It was horrible, actually. It was, I mean, I'm not whining about it. It wasn't getting shot in the face, but it wrecked our day.
Yeah.
And
that part.
The next morning, we're lying in bed, and the phone rings for my wife, and it's Donald Trump, who's not like a regular text buddy of Donald Trump's. She picks it up. Hello? Susie, it's Donald Trump. And it's coming through. I could hear it. You know, I'm lying in bed. Whoa. And the first thing he says is, I'm going to stand guard outside your house. And she goes, oh, it's so nice. And he says, I'll never forget this as long as I live. He says, you know, there's a lot of hate out there. And she said, you know, there is, Mr. President. And then he says, but there's a lot of love. There's a lot of love. And we are seeing that love. I don't think it's human love. And I'll just stop with this. I'm not always convinced that I'm on the right side. I've been on the wrong side many times.
Yeah, see, it's humility, but he's right. There's a lot of hate out there, but there's a lot of love out there. And we can choose what we're going to focus on. Yes, we do need to talk about issues, and it does seem sometimes toxic, but because we're fighting toxic people. And so it is, after the end of the day, there's a lot of hate, but there's definitely a lot of love out there. And those are the people we need to gravitate towards.
You'll never hear me say, I'm on God's side, or God's with me, or even I'm with God. I want to be, not sure I am. But I will say this unequivocally and conclusively. God is among us right now. And I think that's enough. God bless you.
Yeah, God is omnipresent. He's here. This is his creation. Elon Musk believes in a simulation, God's simulation. It's still God's. We can call it whatever we want at the end of the day. I mean, we call Earth, we call it a ball, we call it a planet. We make all types of names for things.